Everyone told him the same thing. You're too small. At 5'6", in a sport built for giants, Theo Fleury wasn't supposed to last a single season. Instead, he won the Stanley Cup as a rookie. He won Olympic gold for Canada. He scored more than 1,000 points in the National Hockey League. Pound for pound, one of the most electric, ferocious competitors the game has ever seen. The perfect underdog story. Except, it wasn't a fairy tale at all. Because years later, that same man, a champion, a millionaire, an idol to a generation of kids, sat alone in a truck, in a parking lot, with a loaded gun in his mouth. The smallest man in hockey, who had beaten every odds anyone ever put in front of him, had decided he wanted to die. And almost nobody around him understood why. How does a man who won everything end up there? Because behind every goal, every celebration, every roaring crowd, Theo Fleury was hiding a secret. A secret so heavy that he spent nearly 20 years trying to drown it in anything he could find. And it had everything to do with the one man who was supposed to protect his dream. Stay with me, because how he finally escaped it is the most important part of all. Before we go back to the beginning, subscribe if you like the stories sports history leaves out. Theo Fleury grew up in Russell, a tiny town in Manitoba, Canada. The family didn't have much money, was tight, home life was hard. But on the ice, this little kid had something you couldn't teach: a fire, a refusal to be intimidated by anyone twice his size. Keep his size in mind, everyone always underestimated him. Hockey wasn't just a game for Theo, it was the way out, his one ticket to a bigger life. And in the Canadian junior system of that era, a kid's entire future ran through one gatekeeper, his coach. The man who decided whether you rose to the NHL or disappeared. Remember that the man who held his whole dream in his hands, that man was a junior coach named Graham James at the time, one of the most respected, powerful coaches in Canadian hockey. He spotted Fleury's talent early, and he took control of the young player's career and life. To the outside world, James was the mentor, making a small-town boy's dream come true. And for a kid whose entire future depended on this one adult's approval, there was no one more important, and no one harder to say no to. Fleury did what he had to do to chase the NHL. He trusted him. He had no choice but to trust him. And that trust is exactly where the darkness began, though the world wouldn't learn the truth for another 25 years. On the ice, nothing could stop him. Fleury tore through junior hockey and forced his way into the NHL with the Calgary Flames. And in his very first season, 1989, that undersized kid lifted the Stanley Cup. He became one of the most exciting players in the world, famous for his fearless play, and one iconic sliding celebration down the ice that fans still talk about. Over 1,000 career points. And in 2002, he helped Canada win its first Olympic hockey gold in 50 years. From the outside, Theo Fleury had beaten every single odd. The too small kid from Russell had conquered the impossible. But the higher he climbed, the harder he was working to outrun something no trophy could fix. Because here is the secret he carried in silence. When Fleury was a teenager, around 13 years old, the coach who controlled his future, Graham James, sexually abused him. Not once. Repeatedly, over roughly 2 years. The one adult who was supposed to guide him had turned his dream into a trap, and the boy felt he couldn't tell anyone because that same man held his entire career in his hands. So Theo buried it. He told no one, and he carried it onto every rink, behind every goal, for decades. And a wound like that, left buried, doesn't disappear. It finds another way out. For Fleury, it came out as self-destruction. To numb what he couldn't say out loud, he spiraled into alcohol, cocaine, and gambling harder and harder, year after year. His behavior grew more erratic, and in 2003 the NHL suspended him for violating its substance abuse program. His career, the one thing he'd sacrificed everything for, was falling apart. And then came that lowest night, the truck, the parking lot, the loaded gun, a Stanley Cup champion and Olympic gold medalist, at the very edge of ending his own life. The secret had almost finished what it started 20 years earlier. But almost is the most important word in this entire story. Because Theo Fleury didn't pull the trigger, instead, he made a decision that took more courage than any game he ever played. He decided to tell the truth. In 2009, he published a raw, unflinching memoir called Playing with Fire. And for the first time, he told the world what Graham James had done to him. It was terrifying, and it was public, and it changed everything. His words helped bring his abuser to justice. Graham James was later convicted and sent to prison for what he did to Fleury and other young players. The silence that had nearly killed Theo became the thing that finally set him free. So here is the real story of Theo Fleury. Remember how we started the smallest man on the ice, the one everyone underestimated, the boy whose dream was held in one man's hands. Every part of what made him great, that refusal to quit, that fire nobody could put out, turned out to be exactly what he needed to survive the thing that happened off the ice. His biggest win was never the Stanley Cup or the Olympic gold. It was choosing to live and then turning the worst thing that ever happened to him into a shield for other people. Today, Theo Fleury spends his life speaking out about abuse, about addiction, about survival, so that kids who feel as trapped and alone as he once did know there is a way out. The too small kid from Russell, Manitoba, turned out to be carrying the heaviest thing of all, and he didn't just survive it, he picked it up and he used it to protect everyone else. So did you know the truth behind the smile? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe, because next time we go behind the curtain on another legend the world only thinks it knows. And if this story hit close to home, you are not alone, and it is never too late to speak.